ahead and call this meeting to order. First order of business is the minutes. Does everybody have a chance to read the minutes as they were sent out?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Treasurer's report. Everybody has a copy of the treasurer's report. Give me a second because I haven't looked over it myself. You guys might have. I'll look over that quickly. I don't see anything out of ordinary. I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll make a motion.
Second. A second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. We're up to public comment. Before we have public comment, a few things I will mention to everybody. 911 center is set up to dispatch all emergency calls in Ritchie and Doddridge County. 911 center doesn't actually set policies as far as in how those calls are dispatched. We, the fire departments, the law enforcement, and provide the 911 center as far as in how they want dispatched, and then we adopt it into how we do dispatch each emergency responder, and that's how it does. That's how it works. We actually, in this case, what most people hear is about the ambulance authority and the ambulance service in Doddridge County is that by state statute, it is set up that the county commission is responsible to determine what ambulance service is in their county and how they want that dispatched. That's not really up to this board to make those decisions. We are here and haven't actually seen the proposal exactly how it is, but that'll come about, and we'll make that final decision as far as in what Doddridge County Commission has actually voted on, that the way they would like for this to be dispatched. So along those lines, we will open it up for public comment. We didn't have a sign-up sheet or anything, I'm presuming. Yeah, whoever wants to speak, you have to stand up, announce your name, and keep your comments, as brief as possible. We don't want to be here all night. So, anybody in particular want to speak for anybody exactly? Sure.
I actually have questions, and my name is Barbara Knight, and 3 questions, so they shouldn't take very long, but I would like answers. Has the Doddridge County Commission performed due diligence in reviewing the Norris lawsuit settlement? And under the terms of that settlement, does the County Commission intend to ensure the emergency squad has 24-hour coverage before dispatching 911? And my third question then is, given the history of lawsuits, has the commission consulted with their liability insurance carrier about this proposed change and what impact that might have upon the commission and the commissioners individually in the event that there is an unfortunate lawsuit that would be occur?
We do have 24-hour coverage, EMS does. As far as the lawsuit goes, I don't think we're here to discuss that. The other question you can answer maybe.
What was the other question?
The question was regarding the liability. Have you consulted with your insurance carrier about this proposed change so that any negative impact could be reviewed to see if you are exposed, if you have some liability exposure, given the decision that you'll be making?
We haven't contacted any insurance carrier now.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I can
Okay.
to tell my story, if anybody cares.
Your name?
Nellie Kirsch.
Okay.
I kind of got interested in the whole EMS stuff there a few years ago, actually. Back early, my sister was a volunteer EMT for the emergency squad. And the emergency squad back in the day, I have to say, I have nothing but respect for the volunteers. But it's a different organization. Back in the day when we had the volunteer organization, you know, we had the 24-hour crews. We had Roland and we had Bonto. And there was another guy, and I believe Jeff even ran as paramedics. And then, you know, when we took over the different changes in that and the volunteers got their letters to, you know, go away, things kind of changed. In 2000, my mom had had a heart attack. And I actually had called the 873 numbers before we'd gotten the 911 and that. And they're like, yeah, the ambulance is coming, the ambulance is coming. I'm like, okay. I called my 5 brothers and sisters. The furthest one living out Taylor Green. And they're all at the house. There's no ambulance. You know, and I'm calling them back. I'm like, where are you? And they're like, we're coming, we're coming. So at the end of the day, they had nobody in the station. And they called Randy Trent out 18 South to come take the call. Which, believe me, we were glad to see him and hugged him and let's go. Because she had a very serious heart attack. So I've gotten really interested in it from that point. And then, you know, we finally got 911, and I was so excited because that night, I even actually looked up in the phone book a volunteer fireman and called him myself and asked him to come give me oxygen because I needed help before the ambulance got there. And then, you know, I sat in on the meetings, and you know how that went, and if you don't, you definitely need to read the minutes. And then from there, you know, we had an incident where my sister called an ambulance for her husband. And that wasn't that long, about many years back. But it was like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And they ended up, you know, they paged Doddridge twice. They didn't have an ambulance, so we ended up the third time they paged Ritchie County, and they come and they took the call. And they ended up, they worked on him for quite a bit, you know, before they could move with him. And then in the midst of all the hubbub that we had where the ambulance, the Doddridge County EMS had said that they were going to get a paramedic, you know, we're like, great. So we were having an auction at Stoney's one night in 2007. And Stoney's sister come back and she's like, oh, I'm not feeling well on that. And it wasn't but just a few minutes. And she's like, I can't breathe. And, you know, my chest is hurting and she's completely soaking wet. And I had called 911, told them she's having a heart attack and that. And they sent an ambulance. And I wasn't outside, so I didn't know exactly what took place. And I went back in to check the people out from the auction to get everybody out so that we could go. And they come back in and they're like, okay, she's going to follow up with her doctor. And I'm like, she's what? She's having a heart attack. And they're like, well, you know, her vitals have come down and that, so she decided, they said, you know, she definitely needs to follow up with the doctor, da-da-da. So I'm like, okay, well, she goes down to her house, which, you know, we're not talking a quarter of a mile. And they barely get in the house, they call back. Her husband's in a panic. He's like, I need the ambulance now. And I'm like, okay. So I called 911 back again. I was like, you know, we need an ambulance. And they were like, well, what's the problem? I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's the same one we had the last time, the one that's having a heart attack. So I'm like, you know, as soon as I get down there, I'll call you back. So I go down the street and and yeah, she's definitely having a heart attack because she's barely breathing. She's blue and that, you know, and I'm on the phone and I call 911 back and, you know, I'm updating them. I'm like, you know, this, and this is happening. And they're like, okay. I'm like, they got a paramedic on the truck? And she's like, I don't know, but they're close. And I'm like, we need a paramedic, you know, there's no doubt about that, you know, we need a paramedic. So I go outside, here they come. I'm like, do you got a paramedic? She's like, no. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Why are you not running with your paramedic on a heart attack call? And she's like, oh, well, that went out as a shortness of breath and that. And he's sitting back at the station, and if we need him, we'll just go back through Doe Run and we'll pick him up. And I'm like, we don't have time to be going back through Doe Run. I mean, she is literally about to code. So I drive to West Union to the ambulance, and I get him because he doesn't have a car to come in. And we don't have time to go back in the ambulance and take her all the way through Doe Run. So, you know, I go get him and take him to the caution lights, and we sit there, and we both thought that she had coded because of the length of time that was taken, and he's trying to reach him on the cell phone and that. And he worked on her for quite a bit there, and then the minute they hit the doors at UHC, they did emergency surgery before they could actually transport her on to Ruby to get help in that. So, you know, it's like, it causes confusion is what it does. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, yeah, it's great if we have a paramedic, but it doesn't do a whole lot of good if they're sitting in the station. So, you know, I'd really gotten interested in all that, and, you know, I'd been paying quite a bit of attention because there was quite a few incidents, and there was other ones, but, you know, those were incidents that really stuck out in my mind. And in May 2011, I actually had back surgery. I broke my back in that, and, you know, we thought that was kind of where things were about as bad as you could get. Well, on September the 16th, 2011, I had been going to the chiropractor. I'd had a headache for a week, but they had been working with my neck from where I broke my back and that. I had taken and went to the chiropractor that morning. You know, I thought everything was good. I just thought the headache that week was a sinus headache. I worked all week. I worked that day. And the only symptom that I ever had all day was when I was typing, my left hand wasn't hitting the right keys on the keyboard. It just didn't dawn on me as to what it was. I was like, oh, that must be like inner ear, you know, so I burned my earwax candles and that. We blew up our balloons out there in the yard, I know. You'll love this, it's getting worse. We blew up the balloons out there in the yard for the parade. It was homecoming. We blew up the balloons in the yard for the homecoming and that. And when I came in, I went to the restroom. I couldn't get my pants back on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't figure it out. Well, needless to say, the time I got them on, I'm soaking wet drenched. I'm like, I can't figure it out, but I finally get them on. So I go to the kitchen to grab a drink. And the time I get the lid off of it, I drop it down the sink. And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I gotta get out of town before the parade starts. So I had went into the kitchen, and I was going out to the door. I got in my Jeep to leave. Well, when I get in my Jeep, it doesn't matter like how I'm turning the wheel, what I'm doing. I never get where I'm supposed to be. I'm just like, I keep ending up in the wrong place. So I called my sister. She lives right there on Doe Run, right beside like where the Little Denny's is. It's, you know, where the old state police barracks used to be. But that helps you. And she comes down, you know, we're talking less than 5 minutes, and she's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like this happy, laughing, goofy person. And I'm like, it won't work. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, look, my left arm won't work. It won't move. It's paralyzed. And I like would put my phone in and I'd show her, and she's like, oh my God, okay, we're going to the hospital. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just laughing, goofy. And she goes to shut her car off. And when she comes back around, I did something. She yells at me, and I get out, and she's like, well, why are you walking funny? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like watching me walk, you know. I'm like this goofy person. And she like, are you fine? I'm like, I'm good. It just won't work. And we get in the car, and we drive to her house just to grab my niece's stuff for the homecoming parade because I'm fine. It just won't work. And before we got back down to Little Denny's, I went into a major seizure. I actually did the foaming, flopping, and she doesn't like those terms real well, but I did. and I don't remember anything from that point. When I woke up, I was in the ambulance fairly close to UHC, and I was with the ambulance authority, and Jess was my paramedic, and she was talking to me, and she's telling me, you know, who she is and where we're heading and that, and I have IVs running, and I have forced air oxygen on, and I'm like, I asked her, I've never been in the ambulance before, but it was a big concern of mine because of the other incidents we'd had, and I'm like, are you the ambulance authority or the other thing? And she's like, I'm the ambulance authority, and I'm like, thank God, you know, and I lay back, and we started puking, and it went downhill from there, so we'll not tell you the rest of that. But at any rate, I was completely like, I couldn't move the left side. When we got to the ER, I mean, I couldn't even get from one gurney to the other gurney. And they moved me in that, and they sent me home. I was home before the football game was over. They said I had a major seizure, and, you know, they sent me home. Follow up with a neurologist. So I did. And the following Monday, I had my boss to come get me. We went to work there beside the courthouse, and wasn't there 15 minutes. It started again in my left hand. It'll start tingling, and it'll get ice cold and it tingles. And I told him, I'm like, guys, I'm going to seize. And I told him to call my sister, and I told him to call David, who is there at the courthouse beside of us. And I gave them 2 phone numbers, and I blacked out. I was done. They said I made it to a chair they told me to get to, and I was back on the floor again, seizing. And they rushed me back to the hospital, and Dale was my paramedic that time from the ambulance authority, and he was really good. You know, he's talking to me, and he's telling me who he is when I finally come to, and that kind of stuff. And, you know, he went out of his way, and as did Jess and Rob, and that, you know, to be really nice and comforting with me. Upon arriving at the doors, everybody's outside there waiting for us, and, you know, they grab the gurney and off we go, and they're like, you know how I was here Friday and nothing happened? I'm like, yeah. That's not happening today. And I'm like, okay. Within 30 minutes, they're like, you have a major blood clot on your brain, you know, we're going to have to move you on to the trauma center. So, long story short, they moved me into the trauma center. And when we got to the trauma center, I actually, not only did I have a blood clot, the clot is actually in the main artery of my brain. And it's like the whole main artery in my brain. It's like, you can look at it however you want to. It's either one massive clot, or it's 4 clots that are so large and connected that they can't really tell where they come apart. And that. I tried to get y'all a picture today, but they couldn't get it done in time. I apologize, because it's pretty wild. But the clot was so bad that it actually had 3 bleeds on the right side of my brain, and it caused me to stroke. And as you can see today, you know, I'm okay. I've got the left side back, and pretty well there. And, you know, they know, there's no doubt that the only reason why I made it is because I had paramedics there that, you know, could start meds, they could do their thing, and that, you know, I had emergency services right there, and that. So I'm very much, you know, for the ambulance authority. And, you know, if there's an issue, you know, with the money, I understand that. We need to work on grants, or we need to look at something else, because if we don't have life, none of the other stuff matters in that. And, you know, I think a lot of it comes to training. And I don't know, you know, I don't know if anybody else has ever noticed this or not, but since I happen to have seizures now from this incident, one thing that I noticed this year, since that had happened in the homecoming parade, this year was my year. I got to drive my niece in the homecoming parade. She was one of the queen candidates. And all the agencies run regular lights, except for the DCMS. And they run the strobes on all 5, 6 trucks, whatever it is they have in there. And the strobes, you know, trigger seizures and that. And, you know, that's just something I would think that an EMS provider would know, and you wouldn't do in that. And so, you know, there's a lot of things like that that just come to my attention, you know what I mean? And I don't know if it's just me, but it comes to my recollection when we were coming about with the ambulance authority and that, we had articles in the Herald Record about the DCMS, you know, needing computers and money for insurance and this, that, and the other. And yet, when we lost the contract from the county, you know, we bought like 4 ambulances. And I'm like, okay, well, how if we couldn't afford, you know, to have 24-hour service and that kind of stuff, and we needed money to pay for computers and the insurance and other stuff, then how can we be buying 4 trucks and that? So there's just different things. And I think that you definitely need to be looking back and you need to look at the minutes because there was a lot of telling minutes in the previous county commission meetings before you make a decision. Thank you.
Can I